This is the all-new, all-electric Jeep Avenger. Yes, it's a battery-powered Jeep, so I know what you're thinking.
It's not a real Jeep.
Actually, you might be a little bit right. I'll get to that in a sec. But first, let's talk price and range, and this little Jeeplet will set you back 70 grand. For that, you get 402 Ks per charge, probably. But by all accounts, looking at the specs, I should very much dislike this car, but I don't. Jump in, I'll explain why. And we're off, and I need to start by confessing I am not a traditional Jeep customer. My ex had one, and being a combustion Jeep, an older one, it broke down and left her stranded in the middle of nowhere. Also, even on the beaches of Florida, her big, tough American Jeep couldn't keep up with my nimble Soviet off-roader. So when I heard I was reviewing a Jeep, my first thought was, But not to worry, because underneath it all, this car, it's actually a Peugeot E208. Yep, don't tell anyone, so it's actually a little bit of French. Well, Peugeot's not really French anymore. In fact, this car was made in Poland, the land of the potato. And it gets even better because Stellantis, the big corporation that owns Jeep and Peugeot and Alfa Romeo and Fiat and Dodge and Chrysler and a whole bunch of other companies, they share platforms, they share parts, and the parts they're sharing in this car, they're proven to work. So I have no worries about recommending this for reliability. Let's talk tech specs though, and this Jeep is not going to wow the traditional Jeep buyers because it's only available as a front-wheel drive. Yes, it's not four-wheel drive. Not only that, it's not a rocket ship either. 115 kilowatts driving the front wheels, which means it's 0 to 100 time is 9 seconds, and its range is not epic either, 402 Ks per charge if you drive it nicely. So if it's not for traditional Jeep buyers, who is this car designed for? Well, the answer's easy, it's right behind me. It's designed to go shopping. It's for the cool urban city dweller that wants a good-looking car that's fun to drive and easy to operate and costs nothing to run. So let's do what Aucklanders do. I've got my designer bag and my latte. It's a knockoff bag, obviously. Let's go and sit in traffic. I mentioned it's easy to drive. I'm not kidding. To turn it on, you just put the foot on the brake, you press the start button for a sec, it spurs into life, and then you select what gear you want. I'm going to press R for reverse, and the handbrake's automatic. It goes down by itself. Power steering is super light. It's got such a great turning circle that it can get into spaces effortlessly. And then we go. Like all electric cars, you drive this one like an automatic. It's got a stop pedal and a go pedal. And like all electric cars, even ones that don't have a heck of a lot of power like this, when you put your foot down, it does move pretty well. As for dimensions, it's deceptively small. I mean, if you had the car just by itself with no reference point, it looks kind of big. But then, once you drop in a few Ms, suddenly you realize it's actually tiny. It's one of the smallest EVs you can buy. It's about that much shorter than a BYD Dolphin. The good news is that tiny size means that it's really easy to drive. It's kind of nimble, it's fun, it's easy to zip in and out of little spots and spaces. It's also really easy to get in and out of because of its great seat height. So it means it's ideal for people who have limited mobility or people that are just like me, old. And I'm not saying I'm really old, but my back goes out more than I do. As for space inside, you might be wondering if such a microbial sized car has room, and I mean, you can look at it. You can see all the room above my head. It's got bucket loads of space. However, in the back, yes, it is tight. There's heaps of headroom, but the legroom is pretty snug if you've got the front seat set at a normal distance. That means once your kids reach the age of 10 or so, they're going to have to walk or give up their legs. And on the subject of space, let's look at boot space. First of all, the boot can be operated by waving your foot under the car. That's pretty neat. It's all automatic. However, there is not a lot of room back there. 380 litres means that you can just squeeze an idiot in there. It also has a false floor, so you can lift that up and you get access to a little bit more space for charging cables. Then, of course, underneath that, there is the tyre repair kit. Don't worry though, if you want to put the seats down, suddenly that space ramps up. You've got a lot more room in the back, although it's not enough to lie down, and you are not going to go camping in this car unless you want your legs sticking out the back. At the front of the car, however, once you pop the bonnet, you might be hoping that there's a little fartment or front compartment to store your potatoes. No, there is nothing but electric motor componentry in there. That means you're going to have to store your spuds in the boot or in the passenger compartment, and there's a reasonable amount of room in here. They've done the whole Jeep thing and made lots of storage available. You've got this huge cavernous pocket here. Of course, you've got this central section here, which has adjustable cup holder divider thing, so you can rearrange the space to make more. And of course, this armrest is also adjustable. And once you pop it open, look, even more space. Let's move on to gadgets now, and both the seats in this car are heated. Yes, it's got seated heats in both the front and the passenger seats. This one also has, as standard, a massage function built into the lumbar support options here. You press that and suddenly, yes, it does the whole pushy thing. That video is sped up, but it looks pretty cool. As for adjustability, the passenger seat in this car is manually operated, but the driver's is electronically adjustable. Let's move on to this display, which at 10.25 inches is pretty narrow, but it does have Android and Apple connectivity, so you can run all your apps, and I've got Google Maps showing up here, that's good. As for that Apple and Android, well, it's wireless. Yes, finally, no cables ruining the look of your dashboard, and it even has wireless phone charging built in here. So this is just life made easy. I appreciate that. Most of the features on the car can be controlled through this menu. However, one great thing that it has, and as I get older, I like this more and more, is buttons for the air conditioning. This is the most commonly used buttons when I'm driving a car, so I'm really glad there's physical buttons. It means that I know by moving my hand along to the volume knob, then coming one back, that is the temperature control. I know without looking. That is cool. I like when car makers do that. It's also got dual zone climate control, which is great, and the sound system in here, the 6-speaker system that comes with the car, it's actually really good. I'm genuinely surprised. I know I'm waxing lyrical about this car because it's exceeding my expectations. I'm really starting to fall for it. Of course, I can also control stuff by the buttons on the steering wheel. I've got green tooth here and also access to the Google Assistant. What's my favorite color?
Dark grey, just like your soul.
In fact, if I was to describe the driving experience in one word, it would be easy. You don't have to learn anything, you just get in and drive. Even idiots like me can operate this thing, and I'm not very smart. For years I thought Kanye West was a train station. But let's get this thing on the open road and see how it handles. We're on some coarse chipped New Zealand roads, and it is a little bit loud in here, to be honest. I think it's all the hard plastics. Although it does have some things to make your drive easier. It has level 2 autonomous driving. That means it does the steering and the braking and accelerating for you. You just got to keep your hands on the wheel. And it's pretty easy to operate. You just press this button on the steering wheel and boom. Although it's not recommended to use on the open roads. It's recommended for motorways where it's got easily defined lines, not too many curves, that sort of thing. And while we're on the open road, let us talk about the range. So the official range is 402 k's per charge. That's based on the WLTP cycle. In the real world, if you're doing a bit of highway driving, bit of city driving, I find take that figure, take 15% off, and that's your real world range. So I reckon you're probably more likely to get somewhere around 325-ish k's per charge. Of course, if you're just doing city driving, you've got that wind resistance removed, you're probably going to get that 400, maybe even 450. Depends on your driving style, but yeah, that 400 is probably pretty realistic in the city. What I'm going to do now though is turn on the speed limiter, which is a godsend. Because it's an electric car, you can creep over speed without knowing because there's no rumbling, screaming engine. So just press speed limiter. I'm going to set it to 100 and press OK. I've got my foot down and it won't go over 100. No speeding tickets for me today. As for driving feel on these lovely open roads, it's a small, light car. So yes, it moves around a bit. It's also got a fair amount of suspension travel because it's quite high off the ground. And while that's great for off-roading, not that this car can really off-road, but it does mean that it does move around a little bit more. And in the city, that's not a problem. But if you're going over bumpy roads, it can get a little wobbly. That's not to say it's uncomfortable. It's not. It's just to be expected with smaller cars. They're not going to have the weight and mass of, say, a big Rolls-Royce. And I mentioned going off-road. This car has different driving modes. It's got snow and it's got mud, and I did put the car into mud mode to drive on that hill you saw at the beginning of the video. But really, it's not an off-roader. Yes, it can go off-road. Any car can technically go off-road, but I wouldn't take this thing on the beach. One thing I should mention though is charging speed, and if this is your first electric car or you're new to electric cars, then, well, first of all, you picked a good one to start with. This is so easy to operate. But charging speed, you've got 3 options. I'll keep it real short. You can use the granny or trickle charger that comes with the car. That's going to take about 2.5 days, so don't. My advice is to use option 2, and that is putting a 7 kilowatt wall-mounted charger in your garage. It means you can charge this thing in about 8 hours. That's pretty good. Well, the third option, if you're on a road trip, is to use the rapid charging network, such as that from ChargeNet, which is New Zealand's largest charging provider. Using one of these is straightforward. You rock on up to the charger, you plug in the car, and it takes about 30 minutes to charge from 20% to 80% full, and that's a typical amount you'd charge on a road trip. That's charging in a nutshell. And if you were to use the first 2 options, the granny charger or the 7 kilowatt wall-mounted charger, if you're using the Eco Saver plan from Ecotricity, it's the same power plan I'm on, then a full charge is going to be about 10 bucks. I mean, 10 bucks for 400 k's of motor, you can't beat that. Plus, the electricity from Ecotricity is climate positive. I know it sounds like a marketing gimmick, but it's true. It's certified by Toitu as being New Zealand's only climate positive electricity provider. You cannot go wrong with that. Sign up at ecotricity.co.nz. The electricity is clean and it's affordable because it's only from wind, hydro and solar. No dirty coal and no expensive gas. Why wouldn't you sign up today? Get yourself some green cred, save some green. ecotricity.co.nz. But otherwise, the car, I really like it. I liked it much more than I thought I would when I picked it up a week ago. I mean, by all accounts, it's not a real Jeep. It's not a real off-roader. And To be fair, the typical buyer for this vehicle might assume that four-wheel drive is a street in St Heliers Bay, but no, it's actually a decent fun car, and on that note, let's do the Spud score. Starting with performance, and let's be honest, it's zippy enough, but not a rocket ship, so 5 out of 10 potatoes there. As for handling, it's a bit light and moves around a bit on bumpy roads, so 4 spuds there. Comfort's next, and being a bit rugged, the seats are quite firm, but they are heated, and it has massaging, and the seating position is great for lower mobility, so I'm giving it 6 spuds. What about efficiency? Well, the official figure is quite good and quite accurate in the real world, so it gets 6 spuds. Gadgetry's next, and it has the essentials like wireless charging and connectivity, but no vehicle-to-load functionality and no mobile app, so 5 spuds there. What about value? Well, it's fun to drive, but if you take that emotion out of the equation, then it's essentially a 70 grand hatchback, so I'm giving it 4 spuds. Charging's next, and its DC charging rate of 100 kilowatts puts it slightly above average, so I'm throwing 6 potatoes at it. As for style, I reckon it's cool, so 7 spuds there. Is it fit for purpose though? Well, as a rugged off-roader, no, not at all, but as a fashionable, economical city runabout, absolutely, 7 out of 10 there. And lastly, the all-important PSC, and 7 spuds there because despite its weird glove box, the Jeep Avenger holds an impressive 61 tubers, which makes a total spud score of 57. And that's the guts of the Jeep Avenger electric car, and I'm kind of sad to see that it didn't get a very high spud score, and I think the reason for that is that I haven't taken the human element into consideration in the spud score. And the human element is fun. I really feel good driving this, and it's taken me a few days to realize why, and I think the reason is that it kind of reminds me of back when I was a teenager, back when the sun was always shining, it was always summer, you know what I'm talking about. It's also a car that doesn't take itself too seriously, and I like that. For example, up on the roof, it's got ladybugs up on the roofline there. And then of course in other parts, like on the wheels, it's got the little Jeep symbols, the grille and the headlights on the wheels, and then it's got the little Jeep symbol there, and of course it's also got a little compass down the bottom there. It's just a fun little car. So my advice to you is, if you've been driving boring cars for too long, maybe get behind the wheel of one of these things and have some fun again. I feel like I've taken 10 years off my life with this thing. It's just, basically, it's automotive Botox.